Cold doesn't exist. There is no cold. There is no force, no substance, no particle called cold anywhere in the universe. There is only heat, and less of it. When you step outside on a winter morning and your skin tightens and your breath turns to fog, nothing is attacking you. Something is leaving you. The kinetic energy of your atoms, their vibration, their jiggling, their relentless thermal motion is draining away into the air, and your body knows. Within 50 milliseconds, protein gates in your skin detect this energy deficit, fire electrical signals to your brain at 120 meters per second, and your body launches a counterattack that is, from the standpoint of physics, indistinguishable from a combustion engine. Your muscles begin to burn fuel, adenosine triphosphate, at roughly 25% efficiency. That means 75% of every molecule of fuel becomes heat. In a car engine, that 75% is waste. In your shivering body, that 75% is the entire point. Your body sets itself on fire on purpose to survive. And when that engine fails, when shivering stops and your core temperature keeps dropping, water, the molecule that makes up 60% of your body, does something almost no other substance in the universe does. It expands when it freezes, and that is what destroys you from within. So let me start with something that sounds obvious but isn't. Temperature. What is it really? You see, temperature is not a thing. It is not a substance you can bottle or weigh. It is a description of motion. Every atom in your body right now is vibrating, rotating, translating through space, jiggling. The faster the jiggle, the higher the temperature. The slower the jiggle, the lower. At absolute zero, 0 Kelvin, minus 273.15 degrees Celsius, all thermal motion stops. The atoms are still there. The matter is still there. But the motion is gone. And that is what cold actually is. Not a presence, an absence. The absence of atomic motion. Hold your hand up in front of you for a moment. Feel the warmth in your palm. Feel the warmth in your palm. That warmth is not some mysterious life force. It is your atoms, trillions upon trillions of them, vibrating right now. That is all temperature ever was. Now, heat leaves your skin through 3 channels simultaneously. Conduction. Your atoms slam into air molecules and transfer kinetic energy through direct collision, the way a billiard ball passes its momentum to the next. Convection. Warm air rises off your skin and is replaced by cooler air, carrying energy away in bulk. And radiation. Your body emits infrared photons, electromagnetic waves, streaming energy outward at the speed of light. All 3, all the time. And here is something worth understanding. Wind chill is not a temperature. The air is not colder because the wind blows. Wind chill is an increased rate of convective heat loss. Your atoms lose energy faster because fresh cool air replaces the warm boundary layer near your skin before it can insulate you. Same air temperature. Faster energy drain. The wind does not add cold. It steals heat more efficiently. Here is what's remarkable. Your body detects this. Not vaguely, not slowly. Precisely and almost instantly. In the membranes of sensory neurons in your skin, there is a protein called TRPM8, an ion channel, a molecular gate. And it is, I think, one of the most elegant pieces of biological machinery we have ever found. When the temperature of the tissue around this protein drops below about 25 degrees Celsius, something happens. The reduced kinetic energy of the surrounding atoms, their slower jiggling, shifts the shape of the protein. It changes conformation. A pore opens. Sodium and calcium ions rush through, and that ion flow triggers an electrical signal, a depolarization, then an action potential that races along the nerve fiber at 120 meters per second to your brain. 50 milliseconds. That is how long it takes for an atomic energy deficit at your fingertip to become a conscious perception of cold. Think about that. Temperature itself, the kinetic energy of atoms, physically flips a molecular switch. It is a thermodynamic gate, not a chemical signal, not a hormone binding to a receptor. The motion of atoms directly changes the shape of a protein, and your nervous system reads the result. And here is a beautiful piece of evidence that this is how it works. Menthol. When you put menthol on your skin, it feels cold. Your brain says cold. But no thermal energy has been lost. Your atoms are still warm. Your skin temperature hasn't changed. What happened is that menthol, a molecule, fits into the TRPN8 channel and forces the same conformational change that reduced temperature would cause. A molecule shaped like a key for a lock that was designed to be opened by the absence of heat. The channel opens, ions rush in, the signal fires, and your brain says cold. But it is a lie, a molecular hijack. The fact that menthol can fool this system proves the system is mechanical, not magical. It is physics, protein shape responding to atomic energy, and a cleverly shaped molecule can imitate the physics. In 2021, David Julius and Ardem Pataputian won the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for characterizing these TRP channels, for showing the world exactly how atoms talk to neurons, how the physics of kinetic energy becomes the biology of sensation. Julius, working at the University of California, San Francisco, used capsaicin, the molecule in chili peppers, to find the heat receptor first. Then he went after the cold side, and what he found was this elegant thermodynamic gate sitting in your nerve endings, waiting for the atoms around it to slow down. There's a second channel too, TRPA1. It activates below about 17 degrees Celsius. And this one does not signal cold. It signals pain. Same principle. Less atomic motion, protein shape change, gate opens. But this channel connects to pain pathways. Your body has two separate molecular detectors for thermal energy loss. One says cold, the other says danger. Both are reading the same physics, the kinetic energy of the atoms surrounding them, and translating it into electrical language your brain can understand, so your body knows it is losing energy. What does it do about it? Well, the first thing I have to tell you is that your muscles are heat engines, and they are governed by the second law of thermodynamics, the same law that governs every engine ever built. No energy conversion is perfect. Every time you convert energy from one form to another, some of it degrades into heat. Not because the engineering is bad, because the physics demands it. No engine in the universe hits 100% efficiency. Not a steam engine, not an electric motor, not the molecular machinery inside your cells. Your skeletal muscles convert chemical energy into mechanical work at roughly 25% efficiency, which means 75% of every unit of fuel they burn becomes heat. When you exercise, when you run, when you lift, when you climb stairs, that 75% is a problem. It is waste heat you have to dump, you sweat, your skin flushes, blood rushes to the surface, your body works hard to get rid of it. But when you shiver, that 75% is the product. This is where the physics gets beautiful, and I want you to see it clearly. Shivering is not random trembling. It is not your body losing control. It is a precisely orchestrated involuntary contraction of opposing muscle groups, flexors and extensors firing simultaneously at 8 to 13 cycles per second. And because opposing muscles pull in opposite directions at the same time, no useful movement is produced. All the mechanical work cancels out, which means 100% of the chemical energy input, not just 75, but all of it, is converted to thermal output. Motors running against each other on purpose, so that every last joule becomes heat. Every cycle of contraction is driven by ATP hydrolysis. Myosin ATP powers the mechanical stroke, and the calcium pump called circa resets the system for the next cycle. Both generate heat every single time they fire. Circa alone accounts for about 25% of resting muscle metabolic rate. Even when you are sitting still, that pump is working, producing warmth as a byproduct. During shivering, it becomes a furnace. Now think about a car engine. Gasoline combustion drives pistons at roughly 25% efficiency. Same Carnot constraint. Same thermodynamic ceiling. The car engineer spends her career trying to minimize that 75% waste heat. Better cooling systems, more efficient combustion chambers, heat recovery. Your body, when it shivers, has spent millions of years of evolution maximizing it. Same physics, opposite goals. The engineer's nightmare is your body's salvation. The numbers are striking. At rest, your body produces about 80 watts of heat. During maximum shivering, that can rise to roughly 5 times basal metabolic rate. Something like 400 watts. That is the thermal output of moderate exercise generated without moving an inch. Your hypothalamus orchestrates the whole thing, integrating temperature data from peripheral sensors and core thermometers, comparing it to a set point, and triggering shivering when you fall below. It functions, honestly, with the same architecture as a proportional integral derivative controller, an engineering thermostat, built from neurons instead of silicon. The second law of thermodynamics says, no engine can work without producing waste heat. Evolution looked at that constraint, that universal, inescapable guarantee, and said, good, we will use that. The inefficiency of every engine in the universe became the strategy that keeps warm-blooded animals alive. I find that beautiful. A law that limits everything, every machine, every process, every conversion of energy, turned into a survival tool, not by fighting the law, by surrendering to it. But muscles can only burn so hard. There is a ceiling, and your body has a second system, one that is, I think, even stranger. Deep inside your body, between your shoulder blades, around your kidneys, along the major blood vessels of your neck, there are deposits of a tissue called brown fat. And brown fat does something that sounds like sabotage. It deliberately short-circuits its own power plants. Let me explain what I mean. In a normal cell, mitochondria, the power plants, generate ATP through an astonishingly elegant process. The electron transport chain pumps hydrogen ions across the inner mitochondrial membrane, creating an electrochemical gradient. Protons stacked on one side, desperate to flow back. It is a dam. And ATP synthase, a literal rotating molecular turbine, sits in that dam wall, lets the protons flow through, and uses the energy of their passage to manufacture ATP. The currency of life. This is an electrochemical turbine operating at the molecular scale, and it is one of the most beautiful machines in all of biology. Now here is what brown fat does. It has a protein called UCP1, uncoupling protein 1, also called thermogenin. And what thermogenin does is punch a hole in the dam. It lets protons leak back across the membrane without passing through ATP synthase. The energy that would have been captured as ATP, energy that would have been used to power your cells, to fuel your thinking, to contract your heart, instead dissipates directly as heat. This is not repurposing waste the way shivering does. This is destroying productive capacity on purpose, deliberately dismantling the machinery of energy production to generate warmth. The numbers are almost hard to believe. The voltage across that inner mitochondrial membrane is about 180 millivolts. That does not sound like much, but the membrane is only about 7 nanometers thick. When you calculate the electric field strength, you get roughly 25 million volts per meter. That is stronger than the field inside a bolt of lightning. And that is the force driving protons through thermogenin directly into heat. Let that settle. A membrane thinner than a virus, holding back an electric field more intense than a lightning strike, and your body punches holes in it on purpose. The activation cascade is precise. Cold triggers your sympathetic nervous system. Norepinephrine binds to beta-3 adrenergic receptors on brown fat cells. That activates a signaling cascade, cyclic AMP, then lipase, which liberates fatty acids, and those fatty acids directly activate UCP1. The proton leak begins. Heat pours out. Brown fat gets its color from being packed with mitochondria. The iron in their cytochrome proteins gives the tissue its brown hue. And here is something that adds a layer of human stakes to this. Newborn babies cannot shiver. They are born without the neuromuscular coordination for it. Their primary defense against cold, the very first thermal defense of their lives, is brown fat, about 5% of a newborn's body weight, and it can double the baby's metabolic rate. A baby survives its first nights on Earth because of a protein that short-circuits its own mitochondria. The most vulnerable human beings alive kept warm by a controlled thermodynamic leak. Adults retain some brown fat. Less than newborns, but it is there. And studies have found that people with more active brown fat tend to be leaner. Their bodies are burning more fuel as heat rather than storing it. Think of the proton gradient as voltage, ATP synthase as the useful load, the light bulb, the motor. UCP1 is a parallel resistor. Flip it on, and energy that was going to the load gets diverted to heat instead. Need more heat? Redirect more energy from the ATP pathway to the heat pathway. Your body has a rheostat for thermogenesis. Shivering. Your muscles weaponize the second law's guarantee of waste heat. Brown fat, your mitochondria, sabotage their own energy production to generate warmth. Two systems, two strategies, both fighting thermodynamics. But thermodynamics does not lose. It just waits. And when your defenses fail, when your metabolic engine cannot match the energy pouring out of your skin, the molecule that makes up 60% of your body does something that almost no other substance in the universe does. Water expands when it freezes, and that is what tears you apart. Most substances contract when they freeze. The solid is denser than the liquid. Atoms pack tighter, settle closer together, but water is anomalous. When water freezes, hydrogen bonds force the molecules into a hexagonal lattice, a crystalline structure with built-in voids. The bond angle of water, 1 in 4.5 degrees, creates a geometry that takes up more space as a solid than as a liquid, about 9% more. This is why ice floats, and this is why frostbite destroys living tissue from the inside out. The cascade unfolds in 4 phases, and each one is worse than the last. Phase 1. Pre-freeze. Tissue temperature drops below 0 Celsius, but no ice has formed yet. Blood viscosity rises. Vessels constrict to conserve core heat. Your extremities, fingertips, toes, earlobes, cool fastest because they have the highest surface area to volume ratio. Same physics as Bergmann's rule in ecology. A fingertip is a tiny mass with enormous surface area. Heat pours out of it the way water drains from a shallow puddle. Phase 2. Extracellular ice. Ice crystals nucleate in the fluid between cells first. This is heterogeneous nucleation, the same physics that governs cloud formation in the atmosphere. Cell membranes and proteins lower the energy barrier for ice crystal formation, so ice forms just below 0 rather than requiring the deep supercooling that pure water would need. Nucleation theory tells us a crystal nucleus must reach a critical radius before growth becomes thermodynamically favorable. Once it does, the crystal grows. And as water freezes outside the cells, the solute concentration in the remaining extracellular fluid spikes. Osmotic pressure pulls water out of the cells. The cells dehydrate. Electrolytes concentrate to toxic levels inside them. Your cells are being drained and poisoned simultaneously by ice that has not yet touched them. Phase 3. Intracellular ice. If cooling continues, ice crystals form inside the cells themselves. The hexagonal lattice expands. Membranes rupture. Organelles are sheared apart. This is irreversible. The crystalline geometry of frozen water, those hydrogen bond angles, those built-in voids, physically tears cellular architecture to pieces. The same molecular property that makes ice float in your glass of water is the property that shreds your cells from within. Phase 4. And this is the part that should unsettle you. Reperfusion. Rewarming. When blood flow returns to damaged tissue, oxygen meets compromised cells and generates free radicals, reactive oxygen species that attack the survivors. The cells that endured the freeze can be finished off by the rescue. Rewarming damage can equal freezing damage. Even saving you obeys merciless physics. And there is a cruel detail in the physics of rewarming. If you rewarm too slowly, a process called Ostwald ripening occurs. Large ice crystals consume smaller ones, thermodynamically favorable, because larger crystals have lower surface energy per volume. The crystals grow bigger, more destructive. The correct treatment is rapid rewarming in moist heat at 40 to 42 degrees Celsius. Water conducts heat roughly 25 times better than air. to melt the ice before ripening can occur. Even the rescue protocol must respect the thermodynamics. Warm too slowly, and the physics punishes you for trying to help. Now, your body's energy budget. The final accounting. You radiate infrared photons continuously. The Stefan Boltzmann law says the power output scales with the fourth power of your absolute temperature. At 37 degrees Celsius, your body radiates roughly 450 watts. Most of that is balanced by absorbing radiation from your surroundings. But in a cold environment, the net loss is 50 to 100 watts. Continuously. Every second. Whether you are awake or asleep. Your defenses. Basal metabolism at about 80 watts, shivering up to 400 watts, brown fat contributing perhaps another 100, can generate roughly 500 watts maximum. If heat loss exceeds that, your core temperature drops. And this is where everything we have talked about converges. Mild hypothermia, 35 to 32 degrees Celsius, maximum shivering. Your body is throwing everything it has at the problem. Every engine running at full capacity. Moderate hypothermia, 32 to 28 degrees. And here, shivering stops. Not because your body gives up, because the Arrhenius equation takes over. Enzyme reaction rates roughly halve for every 10-degree drop in temperature. At 30 degrees, the molecular machinery driving muscle contraction simply cannot cycle fast enough to sustain shivering. The engine does not quit. It stalls. Severe hypothermia, below 28 degrees. Ion channel gating starts to fail. The electrical signals that coordinate your heartbeat become erratic. The heart fibrillates, chaotic, uncoordinated contractions. Profound hypothermia, below 24 degrees. To all outward appearances, death. But here is where the physics turns on itself. And this, I think, is the most remarkable part of the whole story. The same Arrhenius equation that stopped your muscles also slowed your brain's metabolic demand. Roughly 6% reduction per degree Celsius. At 24 degrees, your brain needs perhaps half the oxygen it normally requires. Cold water drowning victims have been revived with intact brain function after 30 minutes or more of apparent death, because the same physics that froze their hearts also preserved their brains, the same kinetics, the same equation. The same thermodynamic principle that stripped away every defense also wrapped the most fragile organ in the body in a kind of chemical stasis. This is not two different phenomena. This is one phenomenon doing two opposite things at once. Cold ends life by stealing thermal energy from atoms. Cold preserves life by slowing the chemistry that consumes oxygen. Same physics, same Arrhenius kinetics. Weapon and shield in a single equation. Remember those newborns from earlier? The ones who cannot shiver, who survive on brown fat alone? There is something poetic in this. The most vulnerable human beings rely on a thermodynamic leak to stay warm. And when hypothermia overcomes the strongest among us, it is a thermodynamic slowing that sometimes gives doctors the time to bring them back. At both extremes of survival, the physics of temperature is not the enemy. It is the negotiation. Every atom in your body is vibrating right now. That vibration is your temperature, your warmth, your life. Everything in this story, the TRPM8 protein detecting an energy deficit at your skin, the muscles deliberately wasting fuel as heat, the mitochondria in brown fat short-circuiting their own turbines, the ice crystals exploiting water's strangest property to rupture cells from within. All of it is atoms negotiating energy, gaining it, losing it, converting it, fighting over it. You shiver because the second law of thermodynamics guarantees that no engine can convert fuel to work without producing waste heat. That is not a flaw. That is not an engineering limitation. That is a law as deep as any in physics. And evolution, blind, patient, relentless, looked at that guarantee and built a survival mechanism out of it. Your muscles do not shiver despite being inefficient. They shiver because they are inefficient. The 75% that any engineer would try to eliminate is the 75% that keeps you alive. The next time you step outside on a cold morning and feel that involuntary tremor run through your shoulders, know what it is. A combustion engine igniting inside you. fuel burning, atoms accelerating. The second law of thermodynamics, the same law that constrains every machine in the universe, turned by 3.5 billion years of evolution into the thing that saves your life. Not by breaking the law, by using it. That is how physics works. And that, I think, is beautiful.